Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of One Man Stream. In today's episode we're going to create this graphic right here. It's a soccer graphic that I put together in GT Title Designer. Today we're going to create the graphic, and then in the next video I'll show you how to control it in vMix UTC. There's a lot of functionality with this graphic. Let's go ahead and set it in motion. As you can see, the timer is counting. It's going to count into the regular time. And you can see where it brings in extra time, and then it starts to count up. So the folks that are watching at home get an idea of where we are in the game. I have some animation for a home score. And then it'll bring the score back in, and with the zoom fade function that we've used before, it'll change the score. Same thing for visitors. It'll show go for about 7 seconds, and then that will fade out. It'll bring the score in, and then it'll zoom fade that score. I also have first period and second period, and I don't have it created yet, but I'm going to go ahead and add halftime and final right there. And then I also have it set up for red and yellow. The home team player gets a yellow card. That's going to come up. It's going to show yellow, and it's going to show their player's name. And we're actually using a list widget for the player name to make it very simple. Same thing for a red card. And then for the visiting team, it'll do the exact same thing. We're going to give the visiting player a yellow card. And then when that goes away, we'll go ahead and give the visiting player a red card. So I'm going to show you how we do this. First of all, we're going to start out in GT Title Designer. I'm going to show you step by step how I created this graphic, so make sure you stick around. We'll have this and so much more for you today on this episode of One Man Stream. Okay, so we're going to start off with layer 1, and the first thing I did is I went over here and I clicked on rectangle. Then I stretched me out a rectangle about the size that I wanted. And then I went to format, and I want to round the corners over. So how you do that is with this radius box right here. So I click in here and I round it over to about 26, and I'm going to do that on both of them. And now you can see that the corners are rounded over. So then what I did is I clicked on this, and under color I did a gradient. And what I did is I did several different shades of black for this gradient. And then right there in the middle, I have a light gray line. And I'll show you how we do that. I click on the add stop. And I'm going to spread them out a little bit. And this one right here in the middle, that's going to be my thin gray line. All right, so the first thing that I do is I click on this first one here, then I click on these two dots. It takes me to color, and I'm going to click on black and click OK. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the other endpoint. Click on black and click OK. Now on this one here, I'm going to click on black again, but here under, and I apologize, I don't know exactly what that A stands for. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lighten it up some. So I'm going to take it down to about 200. Oh, let's make it about 225. And click OK. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other endpoint. Click on black. And instead of using the up and down buttons, I'm just going to go ahead and put in 225. And you can do that as well. Click OK. And then on this one here, I'm going to take this one to 200. Do the same for this one. And this one here in the middle is where I have that thin gray line. So I'm going to choose this color of gray right here and click OK. And then click OK. And you can see it's not exactly the same, but you see the idea here. So then the next thing that I did is I brought in this extra time text, and how I did that is I clicked on the ABC, brought that in, put it about here. I like using impact, so I'm going to go up here to all the different fonts that we have, and I'm going to click on impact. You know what? I used a different one this time. I used this one right here is the one that I used for extra time. I center it in the middle, and then I also center it in the middle up and down. And I changed the fill color to red, and then I just typed in extra time. And I think I changed that to bold, and then I shrunk it down a little bit. I did the exact same thing for the time here for the clock that we're going to be using. I clicked on ABC, I brought it over. I'm doing this kind of quick so the dimensions may not be the same, but you'll get the idea. I changed the text fill color to red. I centered it in the middle up and down. And on this one I did use impact. And that's how we did the clock. For the yellow card and red card, I actually went and got images from, I just searched Google for yellow card logo and red card logo. The way that you bring those in is with this image right here. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab on this, click OK. Then I'm going to shrink it down to the size that I want. And that's pretty close. So I brought it over here and I positioned it, and then these two arrows that converge, I hold down my control key and I just skewed it a little bit. I think what I ended up using was 19. So I'll just go ahead and type 19 in there, and that looks about right. And then I just right-clicked and copied, and right-clicked and paste. And then you see where the image 1 changed to image 2. And then I just click on the image 2 and use my arrow keys to take this to the other side. And I positioned it about right there. For first period and second period, I use the ABC again. Did the same thing. Centered it in the middle, left and right, centered it in the middle, up and down. Once again, changed the fill color to red. Use the impact font. Bold. And then I just typed first. And then I copied. And I pasted, and whenever I can, I do this because it makes it so much easier. Just going to position this on the other side. And then I'm going to type in here, second. And the last thing is the visiting player name and the home player name. These are actually used when the yellow and red cards come out. And I use the ABC for that as well. This time I changed the fill color to white, center it in the middle left and right, and in the middle up and down. And one thing that I want to make sure that we do here, let me click out of it, that we do here is this little box right here that has the arrows that kind of point from the middle to the edges. I always use shrink here, and that way if I have a player with a very long name, it's going to keep it within that box and it's not going to spill out over the other element. So I'm just going to double click in there and type in visiting player. And then once again, I click on this, right click and copy, right click and paste. And then we're going to move it to the other side. And then we'll just, change this to home player. Okay, so the only thing that I didn't show you is the yellow card. I did the exact same thing. I used the image source. I'm going to do this kind of quick. Clicked on the yellow card, clicked open. And then what I do is I just kind of compare it to the size of the other one and get it close. And I'm going to go ahead and skew the Z like we did the other one, 19. And still a little bit too big, so we're going to make it a little bit smaller. Going to click on image 3 and use my arrow keys. Okay, and so that's very close. So what I'll do is I'll right click and copy and right click and paste. And then we're going to relocate this one to the other side. And I'm doing this kind of quick, so I haven't been naming all of the different components in the GT Title Designer menu on the right hand side there. But I'm going to go back and show you exactly how I named them when I did it originally. And I try to be as specific as I can. And that way, when I'm mapping it later on when I'm mapping it later on in UTC, it's going to make it that much easier for me. So let's go ahead and get this over in its rightful position. And when we get it there, we'll move along with the graphic. So what we'll end up doing when we get to vMix UTC is we'll be using the set X visible function, and we'll be turning these on and off along with the visiting player and the home player name. We'll be turning those on and off. And then just I'll bring this back in and I'll show you what that looks like. So when we're using it for the home team player, we're going to click this right here. And I have it set up with a timer. It's going to bring it in, leave it in for 7 seconds, and take it off. And I'll show you what the red card looks like for the visiting player. And all we're using is very simple. We're using that set visible function with a timer, and we're leaving it on for a set amount of time, and then we're taking it away. So that's pretty much how we did this first layer. Now, after I created all the individual elements, I'll go back and I'll highlight them, each one of them, like this. And then I'll go up to where it says Create Group Layer, and I'll click on this. And what it does is it adds all these elements into one layer. So a little bit later on, when I do the animation for this, I don't have to animate each one of these particular elements. I can just animate this entire layer. And I'll show you what that looks like. I'll do it one more time. And that's the animation for that particular layer. If I didn't make that into a group, I would have to go and do each one of them separately. And I'll go over the animation after I show you all the different layers. So let's go ahead and turn on layer 2. And this is the home team side of the graphic. And you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different elements here. This first element is the main triangle. And we did the main triangle by clicking on the rectangle box here. You can see the skew. On the home side, we use 26. And then in a moment when we do the visiting side, we use -26. And that's what allows us to get the different skew. This skew is -26. This skew over here is 26. And that way, if you kind of cut this graphic in half, it's kind of mirror images of themselves. So you could kind of fold it onto itself or fold it right down the middle. So this is the main rectangle. What I did is I just created the main rectangle using this rectangle button. I selected black. as my fill color, and then I bumped the opacity or the alpha down to 84, and that allows these other graphics to kind of bleed through a little bit, and I think that's kind of a neat feature of this graphic. The next part is the home team color. With vMix 25, you can now change these individually. They added the ability to change the color of different things. So all I did there is I created a box using the rectangle, and then under fill color, I used this color blue right here, and then I adjusted the opacity to 67. The only thing that's kind of tricky is the team mask, and I've done this before in other videos, but I'll show you again right here. I came over here and I clicked on rectangle. I did the same skew that I did the main home team box with, which was 26, and you can see the skew is the same. And then I go back to fill color, and I chose a very light gray, and then with the opacity I take it almost all the way down to will work for us. And I'm just going to call this mask for demo. All right, and then what I did is I used to bring in the home team image. I used the image button right here. I just clicked on this, and let's find one we haven't used before. Okay, we'll just go ahead and use this one. We'll click OK, and we're going to take it down in size a little bit, and then we're going to bring it over to where about that mask was. Let's see, mask for demo. All right, let's take this over a little bit. Okay, so we have this positioned over the mask for demo. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over here under effects. We're going to click on mask for demo. And as you can see, only the part that overlays that rectangle mask that we created is being displayed. And you can click on it and move it to wherever you want so that you can get the portion of that graphic displayed that you want. Let's go ahead and make it a little bit smaller, and we'll just do it like that. So that's how we created this item right here with the mask. And then we're going to bring up layer 3. We did layer 3 the exact same way. The only thing that we did differently is on the skew, we used the -26, but everything else was made exactly the way that the home team side was. Going to go ahead and bring in layer 4. Layer 4 is it was just a little bit different, and I'll show you what I had to do in order to get layer 4. I clicked on a rectangle, I skewed it, and went under fill color and made it black, and then I hit right click copy, right click paste. I'm going to bring it over this way, and I'm going to go back under effects, and I'm going to change this one to 26 to give us the opposite rotation or the opposite skew. And hit the menu bar, and I'm using my key, and you just adjust them with your with the keys, your arrow keys on your keyboard, and you just kind of make them to where it looks like it's 1. And that's what I did right here to get the background for layer 4. To create these 3 elements, I used the text block. Went under fill, changed the color to white, centered it in the middle left and right, and in the middle up and down. Changed the font again to impact, bold. And then I just typed in 0. And I right clicked and copied, and I right clicked and paste, and I moved this one to the other side, and then I just kind of centered them up, and then in between them I created one more text block, again making the fill color white, using the impact font with bold. And then I just created the dash. And then just use the keys to do the fine adjustment. The only thing left is layer 5. And that was just an image. This is layer 5 right here. And I did this so that I can change the logo for different productions that we're doing through vMix UTC. I'll be able to do that by bringing in the list widget and then creating a list of the different promoters that or the different productions that we're going to be doing. As you noticed right here, when I bring this one in, I have one-man stream here, and then when I originally created it, I created it with 4livesportscaster.com. That's who we're going to be streaming this particular soccer event through. Okay, so once again, this is the graphic. We're in regular time right now. Once the regular time expires, it automatically goes into extra time, and I'll show you how we do that in vMix UTC. I'll also show you in our next tutorial how we do this animation for goal, and for the home score, it'll bring the score in, and then we use the zoom fade function to bring the score in. Same thing for the visiting team. It'll show goal. It'll do that for 7 seconds. Then it'll bring the score in, and then it will change it. Also, we have the ability to display the first period and second period. We also have the ability to bring in yellow cards and red cards. Are also included in this layout as another graphic that I did earlier. That is a substitution graphic. Okay, and as far as the animation goes, there is a few things that we need to talk about. Okay, first off, with home team color, one thing that you have to make sure that you do is you need to go under data. Anytime you create an element with color, it by default is hidden, because you really don't want a bunch of things showing up when you're trying to map your graphic. You don't really want to have a bunch of stuff showing up if it's not something you're actually going to be dealing with or something you're actually going to change. So these are hidden by default. So you want to make sure you want to be able to change the background color or whatever. You want to make sure that this box here is unchecked. You want to make sure that it is going to be visible in your production. So for home team color and visiting team color, you need to make sure that that there is no check there in that hidden box. As far as the animation goes, let's go to visiting team score. We're going to start there, and we're going to go under animation, and the animation that we have, since this is visiting team score, we're going to scroll down to where it says data change in visiting score. And when I click on this, you'll notice it says zoom fade. And also you'll notice when I click on data change out, it says zoom fade. I always make sure that I have both the data change in and the data change out with the animation on it. Same thing we're going to do for home score. So now we're going to go to data change in home score. And you can see that it does say zoom fade, and then we're going to check on data change out home score, and you can see that that is zoom fade. Now the last bit of animation that I want to talk about is the animation that I did by layer. So let's just click on layer 1, and we're going to go up to where it says transition in, and you're going to see that this is a reveal. And we're delaying it just a little bit. We're delaying it by 3/4 of a second, and the duration is going to last for 1.5 seconds. And that is on layer 1, and that is this layer right here. I actually want all the other elements in this graphic to play out before this one comes in. So that's why I have the delay. So it's going to make sense that when we're doing these graphics right here, let's look at layer 2, that the duration is 0.75. So it's 3/4 of a second for the duration for these first elements to play out, And then when we come to layer 2, we wait for those to play out, and then we do this element right here. And that duration, or that element, plays out over 1.5 seconds. So we're going to have the same thing for layer 3. Transition in, it's reveal. There's no delay, it starts immediately, and that the duration of this play out is 3/4 seconds. And we do have a little bit of a delay on layer 4. Layer 4, it's going to delay it 1/4 second, and then the duration of it is going to be 1/2 second. Layer 5, I don't have any animation set up yet for layer 5. So let's go ahead and play it out and see what it looks like. Okay, you see that the visiting team elements and the home team elements come in first. They reveal from the middle. One goes to the right, the other one goes to the left. And then the score comes in. It starts at the top after a short delay, and it reveals itself down. And then the very last thing is this element right here. It waits for all the other elements to play out, and then after a 3/4 second delay, then it starts doing its thing, and it plays out over a minute, over 1.5 minutes. It plays out over 1.5 seconds. That concludes our tutorial for today. I hope you found it maybe thought-provoking and informative. If you like what we're doing here, please give us a thumbs up and a like, and make sure that you do subscribe so that you'll be alerted as soon as new videos are posted. Make sure you tune in next week. We'll be showing you how to do this through vMix UTC. This is what the layout looks like currently, but I'll be adding elements as we go along. And I'm going to include both of these, the vMix UTC setup and these two graphics that I've made. They will be in the description, and you can download those for free. Thanks again for watching. I do appreciate it. I'll see you soon.